I was frustrated about the telco industry in general's inability to innovate effectively.
So in terms then of the changing kind of landscape in mobile connectivity, what's changing? What's wrong with some of SIM connectivity setups today, and how are you looking to resolve that?
Yeah, that artificial wall between IT services and telecoms, is breaking down.
We truly believe in the power of leveraging what are not novel standard IT and technology approaches in traditional enterprise.
What does a programmable mobile actually mean in reality?
I have no idea. Just kidding. I do a little bit. So, just to be slightly controversial, because it wouldn't be a John Freeman chat if there wasn't something controversial in it. Mobile network operators are brilliant at doing certain things, but at the same time, MVNOs are going to become richer and more feature-rich and more capable and serve certain markets in certain ways really, really well. And mobile network operators are now not coming down to that, but coming broader in their offering in terms of their ability to be global.
We're at the front edge of the latest trend that's been rolling for the last 25 years around innovation, around globalising the market, around opening the market. But the whole purpose of all of that, ultimately, is so that the mobile operators can sell more connectivity.
Security, while it's new to the market, isn't a new organisation. We've been adopted in ways that actually I didn't quite imagine how seriously people would take us and the types of organisation we'd get to work with.
What are you guys most interested and excited about over the next 12 months in this space?
Welcome back to the IoT Podcast. I'm your host, Tom White. Every week we are joined by the biggest names in IoT to unravel the trends, misconceptions and predictions for the Internet of Things. Before we get into today's episode, don't forget to subscribe on whichever platform you're watching or listening on, and turn on that notification bell so you're never out of the loop.
Welcome back to the IoT Podcast. I'm your host, Tom White, and today I'm joined by Tim Dowling, co-founder and CCO, and John Freeman, the CEO at Stackurity. Stackurity is a company that provides software-defined mobile connectivity. They give operators and IoT providers real-time self-serve control through the cloud. So today we're going to be talking about how mobile connectivity is evolving, what programmable mobile really means, and why the line between IoT and telecoms is disappearing, and how, more importantly, companies can take more control through modern MVNO models. So if you're building or managing connected products, this one's packed with insights for you.
Welcome back to the IoT Podcast show, and welcome to Tim and John from Stackurity. As usual, in every podcast known to man, we'll start with some introductions. So perhaps Tim and John, can you explain a little bit about who you are and what your business does?
Hi, Tom. Shall I jump in on that, John? Just to kick us off. So I suppose, Stackurity, stacks with Acuity. That's a kind of a good place to start. And let me talk about, the origin of the business now, our vision, which is still our vision today. And I can't really do that without talking about someone who isn't here. That's our founder, a guy called Mike Bromwich. Now, Mike's one of those brilliant people who's a serial software entrepreneur. And I first met Mike about 10 years ago, and he was in the process of exiting his previous business that created connectivity management platforms, as you'd call them today, and sold them into operators. And that was in the early days of M2M that became IoT, and also a travel sim business. And Mike, kind of being, the geek that he kind of unashamedly would, introduce himself as, but also being pretty customer centric, he got frustrated at that point by the inability, despite how good his connectivity management platform was, the inability to get kind of deeper into the underlying mobile core network of the mobile operator. And he was frustrated by that because he wanted to innovate on behalf of customers. Meanwhile, my background much on the commercial side, I'd also become frustrated, again, working inside operators, working inside MVNOs as an internal customer, trying to create new propositions, innovate on behalf of the customers that I was working with externally. I was frustrated about, the telco industry in general's inability to innovate effectively. And much of that was due to the, traditional ways of working in the traditional standardized architecture of that, again, that core network. So at that point, we kind of, over a Zoom beer, as we used to do, because this was kind of around the time of lockdown, started to kind of incubate the idea of a completely different approach to, the underlying core network and the management of connectivity as a completely vertically integrated solution, all the way from the radio network through to an API. And the purpose of doing that to kind of open out visibility and control to the customers of that connectivity, so they could mass customize the service according to their particular needs. So to try and bring some of that public cloud style visibility and agility and flexibility into the mobile connectivity offering, that was the vision that we started with.
Got it. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, that's a great intro. Often businesses start over a beer, right? It just so happens to be that this is a lockdown beer, and what a fabulous way to start a business, right? In such a tiresome time for many people, right? To be in lockdown, but actually something to flourish out of it. I think that's a really, truly lovely story.
Yeah.
So in terms of...
So I was going to say another thing that's true about security kind of then, and definitely true now, it's about actually kind of a team of people that kind of blend experience and, a kind of real sense of ambition, but also just genuinely a good level of trust, who enjoy working with each other and where we do genuinely share this vision to try and build something that's going to be beneficial to everyone.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I mean, I think that summarizes it really, really well. So in terms then of the changing kind of landscape in mobile connectivity, we have a coalition of a lot of different things happening at the moment in tech. It's an incredibly exciting time, but also somewhat bewildering. So for the benefit of some of our viewers and listeners, in your opinion, what's changing and, what's wrong with some of SIM connectivity setups today, and how are you looking to resolve that?
Yeah, again, maybe I'll start at a super high level, and then John will, step in to really explain kind of what it means for customers in practice. But again, at the super high level, thinking about kind of very, long term and obvious trends. Yeah, that artificial wall between IT services and telecoms, is breaking down. Traditionally, if you go back kind of decades in the telecoms environment, the telecoms industry was very siloed and discrete, and there were benefits to the way telecoms operated in terms of being a big global club of these businesses, standardization, security, as a business that in its time was new and looking to grow and establish new global standards. It was really important that the telecoms operators were quite inwardly focused in some ways, or the industry was. But whilst there were benefits to that, outside of that world, in relation to IT more generally, enterprise customers, enabled by public cloud, were getting used to much greater visibility in real time, self-serve control over the IT that generally ran, their enterprises, that their enterprises, were kind of dependent on. And the mobile industry didn't really keep up. Kind of innovation in the context of mobile was very much kind of inside out delivery of new services by telecoms operators, or the MVNOs that grew up to kind of fill some of that innovation gap where the operators themselves weren't flexible and nimble enough. This is someone I've worked in the telecoms industry, right? So I'm not trying to be critical. I'm just trying to observe, I think, what's the reality that a lot of people would observe, that the telecoms industry has been really good at delivering a relatively simple set of standardized services globally, securely around the world, but it hasn't been great. What I said before, enabling customers other than the very, very, very largest enterprises, enabling customers to actually understand that the mobile connectivity offering doesn't need to be a dumb pipe. It is possible to configure mobile connectivity according to the needs of different use cases, and it's possible to do that in very kind of cost-effective and simple ways if you take that public cloud style principle of extending control out from the very center out towards the customer. And again, that's what we've done with security, and we haven't finished that journey, but that is the vision, as I said before. We're now well progressed with that journey. I think coming back to your question really about kind of how the ecosystem's changing, we're doing that because we believe that's going to benefit the end enterprise. We don't sell to enterprises, but we've got in mind the needs of those enterprises to have reliable mobile connectivity that they can configure effectively as an IT service, but also we believe that by doing that, having that focus, we're going to benefit our actual customers, who are the mobile operators and the MVNOs who are currently selling mobile connectivity to those enterprises. Those are our customers. We have those customers of ours using our platform along with their own existing connectivity offering to improve the connectivity proposition that they have for their customer, so that they have a more differentiated service, a more profitable service, because customers are able to do more of the support and the configuration themselves. And again, it's kind of we think it's a win-win. This is all a value chain, isn't it? And we're just trying to support the next evolution of the value chain, where more control and visibility is passing out towards customers, but actually everyone benefits from that, because the connectivity providers who are selling them data today get to sell more data, get to protect their margins, because it's not just about price, it's about a value add. And that's again top down, big picture stuff, but I'm sure John's got much more to add.
Not really. I mean, I think the key thing there is, on top of it, is agility while having credibility and sort of the stability that we're used to. Yeah. So I think in the market today, if we think about technology enablers, let's call them, that support mobile network operators in delivering IoT solutions, obviously there's the big names out there, but Jasper, formerly IoTA, now Eris. And they approach things quite differently, those two in contrast. And then there's the Flow Lives of the world that bring a combination of managed connectivity and technical capability into operators, and Telma, a whole bunch of people in our landscape. And I think we're going to come on to that later in the show, so I won't spoil it all. But I think that the key thing for us is we truly believe in the power of leveraging what are not novel standard IT and technology approaches in traditional enterprise enterprise technology deployments, but they are novel in terms of the level of exposure and flexibility that they present in a mobile network operator. So it's sort of the gelling of all of the extremely intricate standards that exist in the telco land, to bring surfacing them into the world of ease of exposure and consumption in more of an IT construct. And that's really important. And the operators that we work with today, our customers, really value that. As Tim said, both value our ability to operate against all the standards, both sort of on the northbound of an integration, but also southbound towards them. So giving them what they're used to getting, but also them being able to either use themselves or delegate some of those features out towards their customers. And if the flexible, some operators actually really want to take that proposition of sort of delegating the role of all of the control and operation out to certain customers, certainly towards OEMs and so on. Some of those like to have a fully managed service. Some of them actually want to be at the wheel, and no pun intended by vertical. And then others absolutely still want to just ask an operator for exactly what they want, and the operator would keep that control. Other operators are far less willing to give that control out, and that's actually a learning from a product perspective and a product market fit from security's perspective. We were pretty purist in our desire to delegate control, decentralize, and do those things. And what we've learned is that the market is actually a balance of those things. So we'll talk later about product market fit and where we fit into the ecosystem. But I think that's been a key learning for us along our journey so far, Tom. And thanks for having us on the podcast, by the way. It's great to see you and your audience.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. It's actually really interesting, right? And I think, our viewers and listeners are always keen to understand also from a technical aspect slightly. So if we look at kind of like the T, right? We stay at the top of the T, but sometimes we go down the T a little bit. So one of the things I wanted to talk about, and maybe John, you might be able to answer this, is what does a programmable mobile actually mean in reality? Okay, both in layman's terms, but also a little bit tech. So could I ask you to maybe delve into that a little bit?
I have no idea. Just kidding. I do a little bit. So in reality, we're in sort of deployed mobile today. So people who have propositions that deploy them and then are configured, right? So let's just talk about where we are today. We have a whole bunch of capabilities that are deployed into mobile network operators, which provide a nice connectivity management experience, which typically would include SIM lifecycle management, usage, maybe some automation rules, but it's all about managing that in-life subscriber experience. The moment you suddenly want to evolve the offering, and that's obviously to support an enterprise or a customer offering, B2B, B2C offering, whatever it might be. in IoT. So the moment you want to, as a business who owns that solution, evolve that, you need to, again, typically get in contact with your operator. That could be from a price plan perspective, from a capability plan perspective. I'm using generic terms rather not to preference a particular vendor. Or it could also be the actual integration that you have with the operator. Do you want radius control? Do you want to transit your traffic over the internet on an SGI interface? Do you, by the way, if I get too technical, just tell me. If you want to take stuff over VPN, do you want NNIs? Every time, let's say you're a growing solution, or you're a solution provider that has multiple customers in a B2B context behind you, you don't want to be reaching out to an operator every time you want a new APN. Typically, some operators, that's a 6 to 8 week process if you're lucky. Post getting the contract signed, or if suddenly the customers decided they want to move from VPN type consumption of the SGI interface over to NNIs, or some sort of physical interconnect or virtual physical connect like a VC in Equinix, or a direct connect into AWS, etc. So today, that is where we are. We're in the sort of configurable network. So a network that's deployed, integrated into a mobile network operator, and then it's configured customer by customer. And we see this hindering even the largest and best mobile network operators in the world, in terms of they've got a top 100 customers they service really well, but the ability to go on a digital journey with them where there's a much more delegated control is really limited. I'm not going to name names because the one at the top of the list will send someone to shoot me. What we try to do is solve that problem for the operator, and that is what we mean by programmable mobile network or software. Some people in other circles, you call it software defined, right? So you're defining using configuration. For us, we have configuration portals. We also have a full API. And we also do things to join CI/CD pipeline type orchestrations and automations. So there's a range of different models. To mobile network operators, though, candidly, if you start to talk about someone deploying a slice of a network capability based on their CI/CD deployment pipeline, which a software person would feel very comfortable with, a mobile network operator gets very confused / scared and worried about what that agility can mean, right? So, our product is deliberately positioned to sort of allow all of that flexibility to be delegated to the edge, or maybe, and I'll talk about some specific capabilities just by way of example. So if you take security core, we have two products. One is a full core mobile network offering, which includes distributed packet gateways. We call them edge, which is a little bit richer than a traditional packet gateway. And then we have just edge. So mobile network operators who have an in-country deployment with their own packet gateway offerings, but want their customers or users when they're in other countries to have that local data experience, whether that's for latency, content delivery, network optimization, or data sovereignty reasons, right? So the whole blend of different reasons and use cases there. In IoT, typically it's data sovereignty and performance. There's not many IoT use cases where someone's going to Netflix, right? I mean, automotive's probably on the edge of, I think it sort of stands by itself rather than as an IoT use case. That's one that does blur those boundaries, because CDN management and having multiple APNs, being very flexible at how that works across APNs. Again, that's done today. We shouldn't kid ourselves as to how many millions of cars are deployed that are connected and how long that's been going on. But it's done in a very rigid way today, where automotive OEMs, and they're of such a large use case, it's one of the use cases that has made sense to go through the pain of getting all that stuff configured. With a programmable approach, you have a full API that allows you to consume, configure, and read the information about what's going on in your network at any point in time, fully configurable. That's from APNs, roaming policies, steering policies, defining routing targets, as we would call them, which is destinations off the SGI interface of VPN, internet, and NNI, etc. The ability to determine dynamically what packet gateway someone uses or an IoT device uses based on where it's landed in the world. So still based across the original IMSI, if it lands in somewhere in Asia, could use our Singapore POP, for example, from an SGI perspective. The data wouldn't leave Asia. It's wherever they are, they would go to Asia via IPX and come out in Singapore. Same in the US, etc. Copy paste. Those sort of things are highly flexible. The other part of a programmable network, one that the programmable side is really important, but is the ability to interact with it and get real-time data from it. So there's a lot of telco standard ways to understand if a subscriber can attach to the network, how much data it's allowed to pass, under what quality of service profile, etc. That's the DAM to GY interface on an OCS. Mobile network operators have that, and that's great. You start to look at enterprises making those decisions, though, or at least being aware of the decisions, then changing things from an application perspective, or deciding that, my device is online, now is the right time of day to do a firmware over-the-air update. Yeah, for example, rather than continually polling a gas smart meter that's only going to come online when it wants to, and continually dead polling it. We can just say it's on now. You can get an event from us. We use events via Kafka and webhooks. Yeah, so you can just enterprise customers and mobile network operators as our customers both consume these typically. Mobile network operators will be a blend of traditional interfaces like GY, for example, or traditional flat file CDRs for usage. Sometimes they'll use our OCS, sometimes they'll use their OCS. But all of the events that happen, that's one of the key things about our approach to this, is trying to surface all of the metadata, if you like, around mobile connectivity. So when a subscriber connects, a whole bunch of events happen depending what bearer type it's using. But in LTE, it attaches, it needs to get a default bearer, then it will get a data bearer, blah, blah. There's a number of events that happen. This all gets quite dull quite quickly, so I'll stop it with the detail on that piece. But you can subscribe to those things and be say, we want this system, this external system, to know about that. Equally, we have a system coming in our product in the next release, actually, which can listen to those events, and you can sort of pseudo script responses. So in Jasper, that would be called automation rules. The difference is in Jasper, you can react to probably about 5 attributes. In our platform, there's over 100 attributes you can react to. And just getting into that deeper level of the SS7 diameter and GTPC, all of the key control plane things that exist in a mobile network from a voice data and SMS perspective.
Yeah.
Does that help?
John, thank
you. Is that clear enough?
It is very clear. Thank you. No, I really appreciate that. And I think it's very useful for people to actually understand, the USP of the business, right? And how it actually differentiates where we are today. And I think you explained that pretty well.
Apart from our stunning good looks. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that was interesting was the use cases. You said also, obviously automotive, right? It's probably one of the largest things there. But if I can move us on slightly, and perhaps Tim, to answer this question in terms of who is looking or can be an MVNO today and why it matters, is your company enabling and or lowering barriers for entry to this and for more businesses to maybe take part, given obviously what John explained incredibly well there in depth about the more programmable nature of the business?
Yeah, we definitely are. But again, I kind of know what kind of in the telco industry, we're often guilty of kind of throwing the acronyms around. So you're just taking it kind of a bit of a step backwards. Let's kind of talk about that whole idea of what is an MVNO and why does it matter? Why is it important, particularly in today's kind of mobile industry, probably more now important now than ever before. So it's that concept of a virtual network operator. And if we think about kind of what's been happening in the mobile connectivity industry kind of generally over the last 5, 10, 15 years, it's no longer okay if it ever was to rely on a SIM or kind of an IMSI more accurately from a telco business that's donated that to you, and you're effectively kind of purchasing from them and using that as a roaming service around the world to support your particular use case or your particular application, on the basis that you can just you can buy a service which they've resold to you, which they control, which enable you to kind of get basic mobile connectivity access in various markets as and when your SIM particularly tries to connect. That was great and functional in the early days of the evolution of the industry. But what we saw when we first kind of incepted Security, and has become more and more true ever since, is that on the back of increasing regulation around data sovereignty, for example, or even if it's not about data sovereignty, about tighter rules around actually the security of data routing, or whether it's about telco specific regulation of permanent roaming when certain IMSIs can and can't be used in certain markets. That whole regulatory environment is imposing ever stricter requirements on the enterprise end user. So it's no longer okay for them to rely on one or two kind of IMSIs that are roaming around the world. They need to start to build and have visibility and control over a wider portfolio of connectivity solutions for local markets. But they also need to be able to manage that, what could become quite a fragmented solution, in a really seamless and efficient and ultimately profitable way. And that's where security comes in. The reason why more and more consumers of connectivity, the providers of connectivity should be MVNOs, or should aspire to become MVNOs, is because that's necessary for them to have the visibility and ultimately the control that they need to offer a seamless service to their downstream customers. That's just the nature of the way the industry is rolling. And we'll continue to do so. I mean, that's kind of out as our founding hypothesis in security. Coming back to your question, again, I'm going to show my age here. My origin, my kind of route into telco, generally was actually in the MVNO business on the consumer side. So back when that was a thing, right? So I worked in the Virgin business for quite a long time. And in those days, for it to become an MVNO, the full MVNO, as it would be defined, that has its own core network, would be millions and millions of capex, and also kind of a requirement to have very significant technical skills within the organization to deploy that network and support it and maintain it over time. Security are not the only kind of innovators in this space, but I think we're now at the leading edge of innovation. Where we are now is that you can consume, an incredibly powerful mobile core and distributed edge network as a service. We provide it as a managed service. So there's absolutely minimal capex. And in terms of our particular commercial model, we align as tightly as we can with our customers in terms of a commercial model based around active SIMs. So we'll charge a license fee if SIMs are active in the market. If they're active in the market, we define that as actually, they're passing data or they're receiving SMS, which ultimately means that our customers are making some money. So we only want to make money when our customers make money. And that's only possible because of the proprietary, sounds a bit braggy, but it's true. Our innovative software architecture that's powered by our own proprietary IP. That gives us a huge amount of flexibility and control over how we go to market technically and also commercially. And then, our philosophy is to, share that reward with our customers so that we can grow together and, achieve what, genuinely is a global potential for our platform. The only other thing, which I'd kind of say is something that's quite a unique kind of feature of our solution, because, again, coming back to Mike Bromwich and our development team ever since, because we created a new architecture from first principles, designed into it, are the fundamental principles that it's multi-tenant and it's hierarchical. So actually, from our perspective, starting with, a very, very, very small, commercial commitment, it's not that a business can jump to being an MVNO. They can actually jump to being an MVNE. So they can then build underneath them an unlimited number of layers of sub-distributors who enjoy all the benefits themselves of being MVNOs because of the capabilities around self-serve control and visibility, which are cascaded down through each layer of that sub-distribution through our portal if they want to use it, or through the API. So it's an innovative, scalable stack. But again, it's not about. It's actually a platform. That's our vision. Is we're creating a technology platform. We want to be really good at the bit that we do well, which is being a SaaS provider. But the platform only has value if MVNO owners integrate with it, so that their connectivity can be consumed. If customers, MVNOs who are reselling connectivity, or indeed enterprises, also connect into our platform, which means integrating with the API, so that they can control that connectivity from the MZ owners, but using our platform to do so, or also other partners that we're assembling. We're assembling this ecosystem of partners now, be they SIM providers or applet providers or data analytics providers or aggregation platform providers. Kind of our vision, it is broader than just us. We want to build an ecosystem that enables everyone to get more value from mobile connectivity. I'll stop talking.
Yeah. Well, I think the way that you've explained it really is quite fascinating, and I think it is even though you said there's other players in the space, I think it's fairly unique, the approach, right, that you're taking. If I could just go back one step, Tim, what is the advantage then of being a full MVNO? Is it more control over the network, the roaming, etc.? Just for the benefit of our viewers and listeners, why is that such a competitive advantage?
Yeah, do you want to take that one, John, or do you want me to take that one?
Sure, yeah, no, for sure. So, I mean, I think there's a number of layers to it. And Tim, if I miss something, feel free to jump in. So,
yeah.
I think, so in the space, first of all, the term MVNO, there's sort of different flavors of MVNO, light MVNO, heavy MVNO, or full MVNO. Now, what we're talking about when we're talking about MVNO is someone who has taken an IMSI donor from an MNO. So, doesn't own a RAN, but does have access to the IMSI from the operator, and they choose to land that on a core network provided by us. That's what our customers look like. As Tim said, it's then they're actually an MNO MVNE if they choose to be there, because of the nature of our platform and the fact that almost all of that, the same power can be given down the tree, so to speak. We call it tenant hierarchy. You can essentially become an MVNE and empower other people to have the same benefits and be a full MVNO. So what does that give us, though? So if you go to, first of all, there's definitely an enterprise value element of this. So I come from, for some of you might not know me, I come from the MVNO aggregator space, Arcesa, Wireless Logic, etc., and have gone on a bit of a journey there through my telco career. And most of of that career, we would be aggregating connectivity through a connectivity management portal as an MVNO, but that would essentially have a radius server behind it at best, an aggregation IP network, and some API orchestration controls to manage the different API layers that sat underneath, whether that be Jasper, GDSP, Smart M2M as it was, Wing, etc., etc. So a kite, to use a more modern example. So that's what it was. It was an orchestration platform and a single pane of glass over the top of a bunch of different APIs. Now, the type of MVNO that we're referring to, and this, I know it's something we want to talk about, so maybe we'll sort of segue into the ecosystem part, Tom, if that works. I think that's absolutely really, really key here, because what in terms of what our target audience is and our successful customer base is as well. So mobile network operators, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, of course, and that's interesting because they're recognizing that some of them have built their own platforms. Yeah, and I will answer the MVNO question as part of this, I promise. But they've built their own platforms and realised that they've got very big, costly to manage, and while appropriate for the main regions of the world that they service and make large use cases, that top 50 to 100 customer base that they address, the solution that they have has grown out of necessity, and also at sort of point in time when it was envisaged and implemented, or call it legacy in some way, some of the legacy architectures and approaches that are now more costly to scale as well. We're very fortunate when Mike was, during coronavirus was sat, I like to imagine him sat in a dark room with a little lamp on. I'm sure it wasn't quite like that, but while he was designing what this could be and mocking things up and coming with ideas, he was applying the very latest and greatest bleeding edge approaches to technology architecture, right? So we're now in a great place where we have this agility to scale and deploy in much more scalable and cost-effective ways than most existing mobile network architectures from an IoT perspective, right? Which is incredible. And that's point in time, but also the fact that we were looking forward at that point in time as an organization. And that's, I say an organization, I mean, it was Mike and it was two men and their dog to start with. But then we're now obviously far scaled beyond that. And as an organization, we're in an incredible position as a result of that foresight and understanding where that product could fit and why it was important to take the technology approaches that we have. So you've got your MNOs who are interested in what we do because we can offer much lower cost and time to market within harder markets where there's still value, maybe politically for them or within the organization. They need to cover something off, or they've got tenant customers that automotive is a good example of this. Elevator's a good example of this. Where they have huge success in specific countries or geographies, but now for growth, those organizations need their telco partners to be able to step into harder to reach territories. Yeah, and those harder to reach territories mean typically regulatory a little bit harder, and maybe let's just say keep it vague, so regulatory, and then also that ultimately the cost to serve is greater than the revenue that's ever going to come out of that country, because the subscriber numbers are typically lower than the key territories. Most of us go after the easier, larger markets first, and then deal with the rest as a tail. It's exactly what's happening in a lot of those key IoT use cases. So what Stacurity offers to mobile network operators is either a replacement. Some of the platforms that we've mentioned, for some operators were contracted at eye-watering costs per subscriber, and then now operators are now going out to retender for their entire IoT platform. So that's definitely where we play, but also as a parallel core, to be deployed in parallel with their existing offering, whether that be the whole core or just edge, to provide that regional capability so that they can service subscribers, they being the customer, like an OEM, via an operator, to deliver for the end customer, in specific regions like Brazil, Qatar, UAE, for example. They're really difficult to reach countries for practical reasons. There's loads of them actually in terms of data sovereignty. Qatar's a really interesting one because there's stricter regulations around the subscribers needing to stay in country. So we're a fully managed, centralized control plane, fully managed service as well. But we can distribute elements of our HSS and AUC, for example, to meet the Qatari regulations. So there's a number of different things we've got in our product that allow us to stand alongside an operator or become the primary provider of an operator. We don't really need to compete there, which is a very nice way to enter an operator. Go to a mobile full, let's say a tier one, go to a tier one and say, look, where are your pain points? The pain points we've heard are this. Yes, these are our pain points. Great. Let's bring Edge in to solve the data sovereignty issues or the latency issues or the CDN issues or whatever it might be in country. Others go, actually, we have a GCC, a challenge with some GCC countries. Could we deploy a core, parts of a core there and actually donor some of our capabilities over to that rather than what we're doing today? So that's really interesting. Now, that's the mobile network operator space. But in terms of MVNO and where it sits and why the value of being an MVNO, ultimately, we have great providers in the space who have solved the challenge that an industry problem that mobile network operators weren't able to address. We have this converging scenario there where now mobile network operators are becoming more capable and have got broader footprint through either their own reach or through partnerships, preferred network operators. So you go to some of the large tier ones, they're able to offer quite a compelling global footprint. And these, we've got SGP02 in IoT, and we've got SGP32, which is very much, hit the here and now and the future. But we have operators who are successfully using SGP02 to provide a multi-profile capabilities globally, single SIM, multi-region, and localization associated with that. Roaming is still being used extensively in our space. I mean, we shouldn't pretend that's not true. Almost all of the operators that are onboarded onto our platform today, whether they be virtual operators or MNOs, most of them are using it to roam beyond their local footprint. Because IoT typically demands that. There are some that we work with that just want to solve an in-country problem, and that's fine. And typically they'll deploy a private version of our packet gateway, our edge solution, and use our centralized core. Going back to MVNOs and the value there, we've obviously got aggregators, as I would broadly call them. I come from that space, so I'm allowed to use that term. So people who bring multiple mobile network operator capabilities into one single pane of glass. And there's some great players in the UK alone. Obviously, we've got Core in the US, we've got Pangea, we've got Pelion, we've got Wireless Logic, CSL in the UK. In the UK is a bit of a real rich zone of great aggregators. Cellhire, I should say that because I work with them as well. They're another one. I'll get told off by the CEO if I don't mention them. But there's a whole bunch in the UK, and it's a really rich environment here, and actually saturated. Candidly, it's saturated in the UK. So they will do each of those names that I mentioned quite deliberately. So, Core and Wireless Logic, they have their own core mobile networks. In fact, Wireless Logic has a number of them, and they will surface them typically through an aggregation platform as part of that service. But they have donor MZs from mobile network operators, and they have their own cores of different ages and capabilities, right? I'm sure. So, and Core the same. I'm not sure. I don't think some of the other aggregators, they are still just aggregating. So they're taking APNs for an operator and they're consuming Jasper APIs, IoT APIs, etc., etc. So they're providing what we did in Arkesso, which was API orchestration, radius authority, and IP aggregation, for example. So bringing all of that IP traffic back to one place and delivering it neatly in a bow to an enterprise or to an end customer. So that's that type of MVNO. Then we've got full stack MVNO, and that's where the value is, and looking at understanding how to, one of the questions we often get asked in engagements is, are you helpful to us or are you competitive to? Are you enabling someone else to be competitive to us? The answer is we're helpful for the ecosystem. Everything we're trying to do is to enable people to grab more value, to take greater wallet share. So whether you are an aggregator, sitting in that space and you want an amazing programmable core mobile network to step up the chain, go to one of the larger of your mobile network operators and say, actually, we'd like to become a full a full MVNO now. That the price points for that have really come down. We're in a position where we can offer those integrations, as Tim alluded to the other day, and it's not millions of pounds anymore, right? It's a very different model, and our shared service approach to that really lowers the barriers to entry in terms of initial barriers to entry, and then the TCO over time, only paying for what you use, which is great. The other capability there, Tom, is edge. So in the aggregator space, most MVNO aggregators will work with operators, and each of those operators will have their own packet gateway directly aligned with wherever the core mobile network is, the rest of the core mobile network is. Our edge product allows those aggregator MVNOs to get, probably 60% of the benefit actually of the rest of the stack, with all of the control over where data goes, being able to configure APNs, VPNs, all of those things in real time, all of the policy control around where traffic goes, how fast it can go, the rating side of things, content filtering, all of that stuff. Being able to do that, but not own your own core, just have the edge piece and work with that preferred mobile network operator. And we can very quickly, actually within a number of days, if the mobile network operator can, 2 days, if the mobile operator can move that fast, with a limited integration. It's not a full core, it's not IMSI donation, but them just pointing some DNS records towards us for APNs. And then suddenly that MVNO can have all of the power and control and not have to ever talk to the operator about their APN setup and all of the craziness around, typically they're longer projects, as I alluded to, 6 to 8 week projects, without needing to take a course. So there's different barriers to entry. Why do that as an MVNO? You're going up the value chain. You're getting more control. At the same time, you're able to, as Tim alluded to earlier, give more control to the edge. So enable your customers to be more self-sufficient, potentially reducing your cost to serve. Again, not all MVNOs will want to do that. They might want to keep that value themselves as a managed service. That's their choice. But I think that's really to try and cover that question, your MVNO question. That's the value here. So going up the stack would be, I could have just said that at the beginning, couldn't I, and shut up. But going up the stack, going up the value chain. And, a lot of these organizations are also on a private equity journey, right? So you're looking to evidence your enterprise valuation and why that's important. Having an IMSI sponsorship arrangement with a particular operator, that's a commitment seen as an asset by a lot of people. Having a core mobile network to land that on is really important, and having a flexible best of breed which has an absolutely clear strategy for why it's differentiating, going to continue to be, with a global view of the world. So enabling MVNOs to be global. One IMSI, obviously it depends on the roaming rates and the footprint associated with that IMSI. But one IMSI that has the right footprint for you, you can now provide a local experience in any country you want to, working with security. Yeah. Fantastic. You answered one of the questions that I was going to ask you there, John, around, what would telco say about competition and collaboration, right? And I think you answered that quite well. There is an interesting point on that, Tom, really quickly. Sorry. Just the elephant in the room for anyone who is in telco space and listening is the aggregator space. The companies that brought different mobile network operators together really do still serve a very important place in this world. But mobile network operators are also after making them irrelevant, right? So mobile network operators want to be all things to all men. But we all know the reality of large mobile networks, just to be slightly controversial, because it wouldn't be a John Freeman chat if there wasn't something controversial in it. Mobile network operators are brilliant at doing certain things. And definitely there's room for them to grow and deliver more. And we're working with mobile network operators to deliver that in real time today. And we very much look forward to and welcome doing that more with mobile network operators across the world. But at the same time, I think it's not that one's going to eat the other. They're just going to come closer together, right? And so MVNOs are going to become richer and more feature rich and more capable and serve certain markets in certain ways really, really well. And mobile network operators are now not coming down to that, but coming broader in their offering in terms of their ability to be global. SGP32 is really going to help that as well. But then there is the third dimension to this, which is someone who doesn't have any of those assets at all and just does orchestration of unmanaged or semi-managed connectivity. Personally, we don't believe that's a route forward. Well, as a business and personally, I don't believe that's the way forward. I think SGP32 is really important for orchestration, but having that all aligned through one pane of glass that allows that orchestration and control, and powered by brilliantly flexible mobile networks that are highly programmable. So I was going to say configurable, but configurable, but by programmatically and instantly and in real time. That's the other key thing we haven't really pulled out here. Everything in security, and we believe this is really important for IoT, eSIM use cases, etc., is the real-time nature of what's going on. A mobile network at a signaling level knows what's going on in real time. Obviously, it has to. There's been this sort of weird opaque glass between that piece and it being surfaced to people who could also leverage the value from the metadata, making real-time decisions. Jasper is a great example. It's very good, but it's a near real-time decision engine. It's unnecessary that those blockers are in place. It was a technological scaling issue that created those things around the technologies used around radius, for example, and the need for the way the AAA elements of radius work, particularly around accounting and the ability to scale a radius server to handle accounting messages greater than a few minutes per interim. So that doesn't exist anymore. We're in a real-time world in every other space other than mobile. Yeah, and we're really, really proud as security to say that we are real-time and able to provide real-time and that opaque glass. Imagine like that's those cool screens that you can switch from black to white. We can just switch it to clear. We've got a nice transparent view from edge to edge.
Yeah, and it's at. Sorry, go on, Tim.
Sorry. Just very quickly kind of jump on John's comments there. Obviously, I agree with them all. I just think, again, real big picture. We're just part of the latest wave of innovation flowing through the telecoms industry. Going back to the origins of the MVNO market, before there were MVNOs, operators did it all and were resistant to kind of the wholesale model. And then, innovative operators decided now to open out wholesale. And then all of a sudden, all of these businesses, valuable businesses serving different niches, came into being, and the industry moved on. And actually, the operators, those that embraced the MVNO model, kind of then grew kind of much more quickly on the back of it. I think we're at the front edge of the latest trend, that's been rolling for the last 25 years around innovation, around globalizing the market, around opening the market, around being more customer centric, more flexible, all the stuff John's been talking about, extending more visibility and control out to end customers. But the whole purpose of all of that ultimately is so that the mobile operators can sell more connectivity. That's if we do our job really well, our integrated into donor partners, our partner mobile operators will just sell mobile connectivity better.
Yeah.
I mean, I heard that we're industry leaders at the forefront of our industry, smashing it. But I mean, there is the reason I joke about that is it's really important from a credibility perspective to also talk about being proven. Security, while it's new to the market, isn't a new organization. I've been around in the organization for just over a year, and we're having great fun, achieving amazing things in the market, and we've been adopted in ways that actually, before I was CEO, I didn't quite imagine the scale of how seriously people would take us and the types of organisation we'd get to work with, which is very humbling. And thank you to those organisations. You know who you are. I think, but credibility and being proven has been part of our journey over the last 5 years, and getting in early with some people who believed in us, believed in the story that we've been talking about today. The landscape, Tom, that you've helped us articulate. Thank you for that. I think that's amazing. But we're in a place now, and we've got really amazing peers, really competitors in the market as well, and we would hopefully keep each other true and honest. I won't name them because I'll either upset someone or exclude someone. But really, really proud to be working in the market to try and create a better value for our customers and drive a really compelling ecosystem. And there's a bit of co-opetition in there as well, Tom, where we can do things that others can't and vice versa. Working with eSIM providers, we don't compete with eSIM providers, but bring those into the ecosystem. We've got some exciting news, just as a bit of a tease, coming along where we're going to have we're about to launch a marketplace type approach to bring actually some people who overlap with what we do into a marketplace, use case driven. So everyone's got their own sort of page, but at the same time we've got these use case solutions which are real life solutions which show how it's sort of greater than the sum of its parts type scenario. So you bring this and this together. In our case, people have either sort of sort of integrated or pre-integrated status, and so they're either solutions that are out in the wild, done, proven, or they're in the process of integrating. And the goal there, obviously, is to make it easier for people to understand when they've got their whole puzzle, for the connectivity, SIM management, maybe UICC side of things, whatever it might be, what parts of the ecosystem they need to pull together to make that puzzle complete. So we're trying to make that journey easier for people as well.
Yeah, excellent. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I think it's definitely a wave of innovation, as you say, right, going through the industry at the moment, and you guys are really at the forefront of it. And I think the passion is quite clear to see. John and Tim, how you explain it and how you talk about it.
Along with the big black eyes showing how many hours we do every day to make it happen.
I think we're all part of that club somewhat, John. Right? The less said about that, the better, I think. Yeah. I kind of wanted to move on to kind of a bit of practical next steps and kind of final thoughts from you guys as we're kind of nearing the end of the podcast. So succinctly, if I could ask you to try and answer this in a single sentence, just to wrap things up. So in terms of key takeaways for enterprise connectivity leaders, what sort of questions should they be asking their provider in your view?
Reachability, future-proofing, and scalability.
That was succinct. I appreciate that. Very good.
You're welcome.
Okay. The next one. For MVNOs and aggregators, what's a smart next move in staying competitive, in your opinion?
Go on, Tim. You've got that one.
Smart next move. I think aspire to more visibility and control over the connectivity offering. I really don't in any way come across as kind of in any way patronizing, but I've heard, not people in the telco industry, but lots of people outside the telecoms industry in the IoT world kind of view the mobile connectivity element as the dumb pipe. That cliche I've mentioned before. Either it works or it doesn't. As long as it's cheap, that's okay. Our focus is, John talked about network events. We surface out 50 plus network events out through our API that people can use intelligently to observe and then control the mobile connectivity offering. It's just, as we all, anyone that works in the industry knows how mind blowing actually and demanding, and complex the actual kind of workings of signaling and the operations of the global mobile ecosystem are, and how powerful they can be if they're harnessed. That's what I'd say. To a connectivity provider, open the mind to thinking, well, actually, if I could control the connectivity offering, what might I be able to do for the customer?
Could I just add one thing to that, Tom? Just real quick. I'll be succinct. Is again, reach. Yeah. So think globally. Yeah. Local experience, or what? It's a bit like the HSBC, the local bank, the equivalent of that, but for MVNO. And don't be afraid of the technological leap that it takes to get the level of control and reach, because organizations like Security provide a fully managed integrated service. So you have to manage profiles and things like that, but you don't have to be a mobile network specialist. There might be a bunch of CTOs listening to this that are like, I'm really good at the stuff. I know Kafka really well. I know AWS really well. I know my stuff, but actually you start to talk to me about SCCP or this, that, and the other. I don't know what those acronyms mean. It's terrifying. Don't worry. Security's not here to make you look stupid. We're here to help make that happen without you needing to worry about it.
Good. And I think that was going to answer my last question was, how would someone approach working with someone like Security? And I think you've answered that, pretty well.
I wouldn't. We're a bunch of clowns. Just kidding. No, I mean, I think obviously you guys can, anyone can just reach out to us. I think depending whether you're at MNO, typically the engagement is different. So MNOs, they're engaged in a certain way. They've got it is very different because they've typically got an established solution. So it's about understanding the deltas between what we do and what they currently do, and understanding whether they can base migrate or whether they need to bring us in for just growth, or whether it's for specific regions and capabilities, Tom, whether that's edge or whether that's core. So there's sort of a very, very different set of sort of conversations in the sort of pre-sales elements of that. And then when you think about MVNOs, it's exactly about, right, currently we aggregate and orchestrate these different forms of connectivity, and we don't want to change the way we do that, but we need a local breakout in the US. Okay, great. Well, introduce us to that mobile network operator that you're working with who are providing you IoT systems, and we'll talk to them about just providing the distributed packet gateway element. Others really understand the value of going up the stack. As I said earlier, going up the value chain, driving their market position, their strength of market position, and also that external position from as I said, from an EV perspective, and the steps along a private equity journey. That's really, really important. I've done that quite a few times now, and I think always finding stuff that's the other thing they could do is stick AI in their product somewhere. That's probably the other thing they could do to differentiate in their space. There's a couple of levers they could play, but one of them is definitely going up the stack with a programmable core mobile network as a managed service. It's the easiest thing in the world, right? You subscribe to us, work with us, we do all the integration, we run it for you, you get all the value attributed to you when people are looking in at you, and whether that's from a sort of market perspective or whether that's from an M&A perspective.
What are you guys most interested and excited about over the next 12 months in this space?
For us,
I'll say from a security perspective, for me, it's about kind of reaching a tipping point as a platform, because that's our model, and as platforms work, right? Kind of the more people that engage as stakeholders in the platform. So in our world, that's the IMSI owners, the mobile operators contributing their connectivity, or it's customers integrating, or it's other kind of service providers. It's also about us deploying more and more shared edge sites around the world. The more kind of value, or the more kind of mature the platform becomes, the more stakeholders there are on the platform, the more richer it becomes for everyone. And that's the thing I'm excited about, is like really getting to a tipping point where more and more people see the value of joining, and the more people that join, the more valuable it becomes for everyone.
Yeah, more case studies, more track records, more value across the ecosystem, and just really
more valuable service. It enables our service. Our service becomes more valuable the more IMSI owners that are integrated, because we don't play a part in that. We'll make introductions, and if a mobile operator is integrated, then it's very straightforward for any end customer to consume their connectivity using our platform. So it's I'm excited about that tipping point. And what you think, John?
Yeah, no, I'd say critical mass. So we're in a great position where we're doing very well against our plans. We're overperforming against where we'd ever dreamt we would be. But when you look at it from value towards our customers, that critical mass, the more people we have on board. We talked about SGP32, for example. We talked about mobile network operators taking our platform. Every time a mobile network operator joins the platform, they essentially, and we talked about this idea of a marketplace, right? So that we're going to be launching soon. So each of those operators will exist if they want to on that marketplace, and have the ability to work operator on the commercial side of how they sell each other connectivity. But one of the things we haven't talked about is we can aggregate a view of all of those in one place as well. So any mobile network operator, IMSI, that's integrated, you can bring that in as what's called a subtenant level, and a mobile network operator can get access to other mobile network operators' resources if they want to, if that's agreed. Obviously, there's various contractual things that need to happen, but technically it can happen out of the box instantly. So you end up with a full stack MVNO aggregator model, which is, in my view, the best of both worlds. So it's aggregation, but without the decoupling of power and the removal of power.
Yeah, excellent. Guys, we're nearing the part of the podcast where we go for a quick fire question round, but there's actually only one question which I want to ask you in this round, which I think is actually quite interesting. So when I talk about IoT, and I've done this for a long time now, there's lots of different elements to IoT, and there's lots of different facets that we talk about, but the passion that comes through from you guys is palpable, right? So the question I want to ask you is, what's the one decision, and if we start with you, Tim, what's the one decision that you're really glad you made in your career to get you to where you are today?
Ooh, before I even thought about telecoms, first few years of my career, I worked in the drinks industry and had a brilliant time. The 20-something guy, absolutely loved it. And 2 or 3 years into that particular job, I was a marketing guy, a brand manager. I had a bit of a fork in the road career-wise. I had a choice of a more senior job, senior brand manager or whatever it was, marketing manager, kind of heading up a bigger brand. And that would have involved, success would have been 6% growth a year and, kind of a bit of a super tanker kind of situation. You could steer it, you couldn't really change very much. Or I could run the new product development team, which was, at that point, for various reasons, was a blank sheet of paper, big growth agenda, huge risk, lots of uncertainty. But I was drawn to that. I just thought, at that point, my decision, I love, it's kind of in my career DNA, really, that loop that if you kind of get involved in innovation, or it could be, a turnaround of some kind of type, connecting an opportunity or a challenge with some insight or an idea and then the execution to make it happen. That's, I took that fork in the road in every career. When I've faced a similar decision ever since, I've always made the same decision. Hasn't always been a smart decision because I've always chosen the riskier option. And sometimes those risks don't work out, do they? But I've had a lot of fun and I've met some great people.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for that. And John, how about yourself?
Well, there's actually 2, and they're both really quick. One was not to become a doctor. So I wasn't able to go off to I couldn't afford to go off to university and ended up in a career in IT. And then later down the line, telco. But then probably the most that was probably the most important, but the most impactful for me and my family was to be an investor, shareholder in any business that I operate in. Yeah, so because that allows you can see from Tim and I, we deeply care about what we're doing, we believe in it. And that's the same across our whole organization. And you come into our office and we're very proud of our team. And I certainly hope and feel that all of our team love coming to work every day and making a contribution towards our vision and mission. And for me personally, being a people-led person who's deeply invested emotionally and financially in an organization and choosing to do that quite early on in my career was probably the most impactful thing that I did.
Oh, that's incredible. Yeah, that's good. I love the fact that you've both come from one place into where you are now and very, very passionate about the business, and you can tell that the experience is really there. So thank you so much for your time today, guys. I really, really enjoyed getting to learn more about your business and more about yourselves individually.
You,
Where can people find out more about Stackuity in terms of social media, websites? If someone wanted to go out and find out a bit more about the business or even inquire about actually how you can help them, where should they go?
Yes, come to the website, stackuity.com. So that's STACUITY.com, stackuity.com. Probably the best place to find out more about us.
And I mean, you can always reach out to us directly on LinkedIn, John Freeman, Tim Dowling. If there's anything, we'd be very happy to make sure you're either we help you out or we put you in the right direction. And Tom, just to say a massive thank you on behalf of
thank you, Tom.
Stackuity today for hosting us. You've had some incredible people on this podcast, their peers in our industry, hopefully some of them soon customers. And it's such an incredible space to operate in. And we're really grateful for you and your contribution to that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tom.
Well, thank you very much. It's very kind of you to say so. And it's nothing without our guests and the passion that they have, right? And honestly, I've enjoyed this. So thank you both, and thank you for coming on to the IoT Podcast show. Appreciate it.
Enjoyed it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Cheers, Tom.
Bye bye.